Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Today, in show number 72, Sheri and I are going to take you on a walking tour through the Heraklion Archaeological Museum, which is the history of ancient Crete, the Minoan Civilization. And it is what I consider one of the finest museums in the world. If you want to see Minoan material in one spot, you need to come to Crete. So let's head to the Museum of Archaeology in Heraklion. The Heraklion Archaeological Museum is located right here on the map. And we got there by utilizing our off-and-on bus ticket that we still had one extra day with. So here's our off-and-on bus. We hop on that. It takes us right to the museum. And here we are right across the street from the museum. Now, this building, the original Archaeological Society, was founded in 1883. And they built up their first building in 1912. And then a new building in the center of town, which is basically this spot right here, was built between 1937 and 1940. And it remained there untouched until 2006. In 2006, they began a massive renovation. And it was finally reopened in 2013. So we visited this just a couple of years after it had reopened. And it is quite well organized, but I was unprepared for the amount of objects that we were about to see. So here we are walking in to get our tickets. A nice simple day. We're there in May, and they have a nice little garden outside that you go out and sit after a while. And then, of course, they have a little place to get some food and have lunch or whatever you want to and enjoy the scenery. Now, from this vantage point, you can see one of the parts of the fortification of the Venetians. And then if you turn off the other direction, you can look all the way down to the harbor where the ferries are. So it's a really good location. And we will actually walk back to our hotel from here because one of the main roads is entirely pedestrian, and it has shopping and all sorts of other things to see. Here's the map of the ground floor. What we're going to do, see our little figure here, we're going to follow the chart. We're going to go into each one of these areas, and then we'll cross the hall to the other side, and then work our way back down. At which point, we then go up the stairs to the next level and see the period after the Minoan Civilization and the Mycenaean period. So this will be the later Greek and Alexandrian and Roman period up above. Now, one of the issues that you're going to have with this museum is normally you just walk in and it says Egypt, Greece, what have you. Since this is strictly on Crete, and basically this whole lower floor is Minoan, they have it broken into all of these different categories. Proto-palatial, palatial, neo-palatial, post-palatial. It can get very, very confusing. And if you notice, after you go through room 1, and you get into room 2 and 3, there's no partition between the two of them. So it's easy to just wander through the whole room when you should stay in the one area, then move to the next one. So anytime you see one of these double rooms, you have to be careful how you view them, because it's very easy to spot a really spectacular object. Run over there, take a picture, then go back, and then when you're looking through your pictures, you're like, wait a minute, that's in the wrong category. Yeah, well, needless to say, that's what happened. In the case of this show, I had to do a lot of research to make sure where the picture I took was located at the time. And then we'll go upstairs and look at that material as well. So you'll see this pretty much as we enter each of the different rooms. And I'll give you a quick overview of what you'll find there. Now, in room number 1, this happens to be the period which covers 6000 BCE to the Pre-palatial period. So it's a pretty extensive set of materials, but it's pretty obvious when you walk in because it has Neolithic fertility goddesses, which look very much like the cyclotic art. It has basilic ware, a particular kind of pottery that they make from this period. They have some stone jars from the island of Mulos, and they have lots of miniature clay sculptures, fertility goddesses, as well as animals. So here we see some of the early cyclotic figures, both male and female, some of them in very large size. And then here is a couple of displays of the basilic ware from this period. of which my favorite is what looks like a giant dinosaur and his child next to it. It's an interesting object. And then when you come to the various votive objects, here we have some of the different types of animals and goddesses. See the different sizes that they come in. These would have been used in ceremonies or left as votive offerings at temple areas, sometimes in caves, because they have cave temples as well as temples down in the cities. Here we start seeing the bull becomes very popular. And then we get into the section where you see the goddesses. And then here we have some with the skirts. And then here is the picture of the stone jars from Malakos. And there's also jewelry from this period. We see some of the necklaces, beautiful gold work. And then here we have an object which is like two wasps put together. And then they have a nice little section of bronze. Here we have these bronze spear points, which are made out of bronze, but they mimic what you would have carved out of stone originally. And then you see some of the spear points. And then, of course, the object that is associated very heavily with the Minoans, the bronze double-headed axe. Now in room 2, this will have artifacts from the period 2000 BCE to 1700 BCE, and it will cover finds that were found in Knossos, Malea, and some of the Peak sanctuaries. But you can see immediately the change in pottery. This is called Kamaras ware. There's also some glazed plaques of Minoan houses called town mosaics, but there aren't any examples in the show. And there's some sanctuary figures. So this is going to center for the most part on the Kamaras ware. So here we see this very, very large display of the Kamaras ware, and you can see the different sizes. You can see the swirls that are very typical of the Minoan civilization. And then here's a close-up view of one of them that's actually a strainer. So you have the holes in the bottom of it to strain out debris. And then there's a display of these cups of different sizes, different handles with beautiful pottery work on it. Here we have an object of art with a figure on the inside of it as well as on the outside. And then here we have another one of the swirls associated with the jars of Minoan civilization. Of course, you'll also get to see, such as in this picture, the octopus and sea creatures and other flora and fauna on these objects. So this room number 2 is a really, really stunning set of pottery. In the area where you have room 2 and room 3, because we're leaving room 2 going into room 3, that whole section is known as Proto-palatial. In other words, the palaces are almost ready to reach their height. And I would point out that Knossos and a lot of these other palaces have been hit by earthquakes over and over and over again. So they are constantly being reconstructed and added onto. So what we find in this area, we still have Kamaras pottery, but it's a much more ornate style. And it will also have the Phaistos disc. But first, here's the example of the Kamaras ware, which is a little bit up from what we saw in room 2. But here we have what is known as the famous vases of the lilies. And they also have other cups that come into this type of style. And they also have this cake holder. You can see the side view of it, and then you can see the top view of it. But this is what caught Sheri and I's eye, the famous disc of Phaistos. The disc of Phaistos was discovered in 1908, and it's made out of clay. It has 45 hieroglyphic characters separately impressed on both sides by using punches and then arranged in a circular pattern running from the rim to the center. Now it dates from the beginning of the Neo-palatial period, and the contents of the text are still unknown. There's linear A and linear B, and one of those we can read a little bit because the Mycenaeans, when they took them over, translated some of it. But no one has been able to figure out what it says. You're seeing one side. So here's the back side, and then here's the view of one of the other pieces of pottery and how they have it displayed. But this museum is full of artifacts that if you buy a book on the Minoans, it's on the cover. Now we're moving into the next set of rooms, room 4 and room 5, which is Neo-palatial. 4. This covers the 1700 BCE to 1450 BCE. And that's going to include the snake goddess figurines, and it's going to have the ivory acrobat as well as the mosaic of the bull jumping. And then the room 5 at the back is kind of Egyptian trade items, clay models of a house, and some linear A and linear B tablets, which were very hard to take pictures of. That is a period which runs from 1450 BCE to 1400 BCE. Now, the Minoan civilization collapses somewhere around this room. There's the 1600 BCE explosion of the volcano at Santorini, which may have really caused problems, but the whole Aegean Bronze Age period begins to collapse at this time. So once you go into the room, there's this very nice wooden model of the palace at Knossos. This is what it would look like entering in from the parking lot today. And then going off to the right, we're going to circle around to the right, to the next side of it. And then to the next side, you see more of the courtyards. But you can see how intricate and how many stories there are to this. Then ultimately, you take one more turn, and you're on the side that has a little amphitheater, which is basically just a flat area with a few steps. And then you're out into the road, which runs back to Heraklion. And then a little further into the room, you see this. There's two things in this picture. One is the ivory acrobat, the bull leaper from Knossos. It's an exceptional piece of craftsmanship, a great rendering of anatomical detail, and of course he's executing the dangerous somersault over the back of a bull, but it was part of a larger group, and this is all that managed to survive. Have it very well displayed. And then, of course, behind him is the mosaic of the bull jumping, which is probably the most reproduced piece of art from Minoan Civilization. So here's a view from the front, and you can kind of, in this light, see the pieces that are actually part of the original mosaic and then what has then been filled in. And then nice side view of it, because sometimes you can't get a side view of some of these mosaics. But in this case, you can see where the original pieces are located. Also in this room is this game board. Now, this game board is the royal game board from the palace at Knossos. It's made entirely out of precious materials, ivory, rock crystal, faience, and lapis lazuli. And the ivory pawns are very similar to a game called Pesoi, which the Homeric heroes played in the Iliad and the Odyssey. So it's quite amazing. They found that all this was found in the palace. And then we have our bull hanging on the wall there, the sacred symbol. And then we come to my favorite little piece in this room. I really like the bull jumping, but I wanted to see the priestesses. And so here is our snake goddesses. These statues were found in the temple repositories in the palace at Knossos. They are faience figurines of the snake goddess and her daughter. A snake is crawling over the outstretched arms of the mother goddess and stretching its head towards the top of her tiara. The daughter goddess is holding two snakes, and there's a little panther sitting on her head. The differences in size in this one picture with the ivory breasts, and then this is the goddess with the two snakes, and that's a front view and kind of a side view of it. These are very beautiful. They had several others, but these are the two main ones that were in the room. Rooms 6 and 7 are still in this Neo-palatial period. Room 6 has some findings that were found in cemeteries at Knossos, Phaistos, and Archanes, such as clay figures. There's a horse burial. And then in room 7, which has findings from, again, 1700 BCE to 1300 BCE from smaller villas and sacred caves. And they include double-headed axes, harvester vase, other vases, and gold jewelry from Mallia. Now, we didn't take any pictures out of room 6, but we did in room 7 because you can see very plainly they have these gigantic bronze double axes. Obviously, these are ceremonial axes. The one guard that was in there left for a few minutes, so quickly I got in front and Sheri took a picture of me. So I violated the rules. I couldn't take it any longer, so to give you an idea of size. And then you find these various vases, sea-tight vases that are just gorgeous looking. A whole display case of those. And then we have some gold jewelry and some swords from Mallia. So here we have the sword, and then there's a dagger in the back, and there's a close-up of the dagger. And then look at this stunning jewelry. These bracelets, earrings, rings, and all sorts of different things. Oddly enough, the museum shop didn't have replicas of those to buy, which probably saved me some money. After leaving room 7, we then walked through Room 8, which is finds from Zakros. Room 9, which is material from Eastern Crete. And Room 10, which is Mycenaean. And Room 11, which is Dorian. And just took some pictures of some important objects because we were really heading to the final room where they have all the burials. So here are some of the items that we found in this series of rooms. First of all, here's a set of what most people refer to as copper ox hides. This was the means of moving materials, particularly copper, from one area to another. This is known as a talent. One single ox hide is known as a talent. It weighs 29 kilograms. Or 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So each one of these usually has a uniform weight of about 63.8 pounds. And then here's an individual one. This is what happens to them when you find them in the ocean and they get barnacled up. But once you clean them, then this is what you see. So there's talents of coinage, but this is a term used for these copper trade plates. This is a hair change for one of the statues. So if you have a goddess statue in different times of the year, you change her looks. Here we have a black stone hair set that you would set on the statue's head, and this over here on the right side of it is the bun that goes into the back. So they do have interchangeable hair in some cases. Then we come to the panther rhyton. And so this is carved. Technically, you could drink out of it. It is hollow on the inside. But here's a frontal view and a real nice side view of the almost undamaged version. Then here we have another one of the pottery pieces. This one is from Zakros. And you see the animals on the side. And then we have some of the double-headed axe symbols, at this time in gold. And then we have this beautiful lapis lazuli bull head. And then we also have this little toy swing with a figure that would swing on it. In the Mycenaean room, we had a little bit more material. Here's some of these nice Mycenaean jars with the handles, one of the early helmets, and then some Mycenaean swords. The longest one is about 40 inches. The shortest one, kind of the dagger one, runs about 20. And then here we have some other swords where you can see that the handles are missing. A machete-like blade, spear point. And then here we have one of the boar's tooth helmets that you would see the Minoans using, and also the Mycenaeans. And the last room, on many of the catalogs, it's listed differently. They move this material around sometimes after the pictures come out, and they reorganize it. They have moved most of what I'm going to be talking about up to the next floor. But this is where it was when we were there, down here in this final room. And what you find is, this is where we have burial objects. Clay sarcophagi were widely used during the post-palatial period. So this is the period after the collapse. The dead were laid inside them in contracted position. Then here we have a rounded one with handles on it. Besides this cylinder sarcophagi, there are two other types. One in the shape of a chest or a box that has 4 feet and a lid, and then those that are shaped like a bath. The motifs painted on them are decorative, and they're taken from nature. You'll find flowers, fish, and octopi, or have religious significance such as double-headed axes and sacred horns. They also use ships sometimes on the sarcophagi, and that may symbolize the journey of the deceased to the other world. Then here we have some of the square ones. And this one here in the corner without a lid on it, this is what it looks like on the inside. They all have a hole in the bottom so that the fluids can drain out. In the middle of the room is a unique stone sarcophagus. It's from the town of Aya Triada. On one of the long sides there is a scene of a bull sacrifice to honor the dead king. The bull has already been sacrificed. It's been trussed up on a table, while 2 other animals await their turn. A musician playing a double pipe is leading a procession of women. At the extreme right, a priestess is making offerings of libations and fruit before the precinct of the sacred tree, which is crowned with horns. And the other side, the opposite side, you have a priest, priestess, or queen with a crown, who may be the widow of the dead man and is carrying buckets full of sacrificial blood to give to the other priestess in front of her. The latter is emptying them between the 2 double axes with birds on top of them. They then followed by a musician playing a 7-string lyre. 3 priests are walking in the opposite direction to this procession, and they are holding models of animals and a ship in their hands, which they are about to offer to the dead man, who can be seen in front of the entrance of a tomb behind an altar. Both of these short sides of the sarcophagus have a picture of a chariot and two women. And one side the chariot is drawn by horses, and the other one it's drawn by griffins. Took a while to get this picture because there was a tour group in front of us, about 25 people. It's about a 30-minute lecture, which Sheri and I soaked up, but then after they left, we had an easy time just picking up and taking a walk around it to get these pictures. So now it's time to go upstairs to the frescoes and the Greek and Roman and Alexandrian section. Now it's time to go upstairs, and the first thing that we come to is the hallway where they have all of the mosaics. So here's a view down the mosaic hall area. Here's one of the pictures that you see. It's known as the Ladies in Blue. It's restored in many places, and you can see where it's kind of juts out, so they have some of the pieces. This would have been in the Palace of Knossos. And then you see the Prince with the Lilies. He's sometimes called the Priest King. And these are all reproduced out at the Knossos area, but these are the original pieces. So you can see it from the front and from the side, so you can see what is real and what is art restoration. And then we come to the swimming dolphins in a close-up, so you can see the swimming dolphins surviving pieces. And then here we have the bull, which is also reproduced very nicely out at Knossos. And again, you can see the pieces that they have, quite a bit of the horn and quite a bit of the face. But they have a whole series of these original mosaics on the wall. So what you see out at Knossos is a reproduction. The rest of the pictures from the museum, we just went down through the rest of the rooms and picked out some of the interesting sections, but this is mostly the geometric period of Greece, the classical era of Greece, Alexander the Great, and of course then the Romans. So you come into one of the rooms, and there are I call them the Ptolemaic eagles, and this is a lot of material from the geometric period and also some from Egypt as well. Here's a close-up of the two eagles. And then we see some of the very large amphora from this time period, from the geometrical age, and give you an idea of size. Because remember, you're not supposed to stand and pose in front of these pictures, so I needed to have somebody walk by so that I could get an idea of size. And then here we have some very ornate bronze shields. This is from the Alexandrian period. And then, of course, one of the helmets from the era as well. A very beautiful helmet with a Pegasus on the side. And then they had a nice selection of gold objects, a nice gold ornament here, necklaces, rings, earrings, and then this beautiful votive offering with three griffins on the side of it. And then after that, we have decided that we had finished and it was time to go and get something to eat. We went down and ate at the little restaurant there and then walked back to our hotel. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.